Good morning. Love you too, man. Good morning. How's everybody doing this week? Good? Bad? Tara, can you hear me? Yeah? No? Yes? All right. Hey, welcome to church. We're glad you're here. Tucker's underdressed. That's an inside joke. No, we're so glad you're here. If you're new here, welcome. I'm the associate pastor, Hayden Dennis. I don't know if anybody, I lose track of who's new and who's not, but welcome if you're new. We're so glad you're here. I got a few announcements. Actually, don't have a lot. So camp coming up really soon, June 28th. So if you have not paid for camp or you've only paid your deposit, please get with us as soon as you can. We've got a lot of supplies we got to pick up, a lot of expenditures getting ready to happen. So if we need you to pay. If you need help, we do have scholarships. So let Shayna, Heather, Tara, if you don't know those people, you three raise your hands. Tara's in the back. Shayna's talking. There's Heather. And Heather's talking too. So see, that's your leadership team. They're still talking while I'm talking. So. But anyways, talk to them if you need help to pay. We don't want money to be an issue for anybody not to go. Camp worker meeting today, 1 o'clock, right after second service. It will not be long is what it says. I'd hold them to that because they're not serving you food. So short meeting, 1 o'clock. We're at Fellowship Hall, West Wing. All right. Hat order. If you want a hat, you can get with me. We're going to try to, instead of just order a bunch, I'm going to try to at least get kind of narrowed down. We'll probably just do a snapback trucker style hat or something, whatever colors you want. Yeah, it'll be right at $10 a piece. So get with me. I'll try to get I'll have the ladies make me a form or something, and we'll get some ordered. My hats are looking really bad. So we need some new hats. So if you want a hat, get with me. Share Faith app, we talked about it last week and told you to check it out and use it, and you guys crashed it. It's having some technical issues, so we've been working on it this week. If you open the app and you have to refresh it every time to get the new contact or the new information, and we don't know why, so I don't know, maybe they can fix it. I know Tara's been emailing back and forth with them. So if you are new here, I've seen that go by. Fill out a Connect card. We'd love to have a record of you. And the only other thing I've got, I think, is the building. We worked on it yesterday. I don't know why we're not there today, but I'd see. Anyways, the sound is in, guys. It sounds great. God bless us with that. We got that so much cheaper than I thought we were going to, and it sounds amazing. We got 250 chairs sitting in there waiting, so I don't know why we're not there. I mean, the first 8 people that showed up could have parked, but no, listen, the building's going really good. If you want to help, if you drive by and we're there, or if you just want to see it, stop in and take a look at it. The addition is pretty well all dried in. Almost all the metal's done on it. The doors have been moved out. It's looking a lot different. Had another gentleman come by yesterday to bid the parking lot. So we're going to be in it soon. I don't know how soon, but we're going to be in it soon. But I was talking to another Christian this week from a different church about stuff and about our church. And he was talking about how it was just different in his church compared to ours because of how real we are. And I think I love that. And there's a prime example of this realness happened yesterday. But not very many people got to witness it. But we're working on the church. And the sound went just flawlessly, which doesn't happen. So we thought, well, let's work on the TVs. So we tried the TVs. I had HDMI ran. It didn't work. And it didn't work for quite a while. We tried other computers. Finally got down to the point that it was going to be the cable was bad. And I had a junction box, brand new, would plug it in. It wouldn't light up. So I grabbed that box, and I smashed it into the counter as many times as I could. So I'm just being real with you, all right? So I smashed it, and I got really mad, and Tara's telling me, why don't you leave and come back with fresh eyes? Like, she knows what she's talking about. But anyways, so I find we're dragging cables just across the floor. We found one that would work. I'm like, all right, I'll just go up here. There's a raceway. We'll jerk that cable out, put this one in. So I get in the lift, and I fly above the sound booth, and I look down the pipe. And we've been messing with 2 HDMI cables because I wasn't sure which one was which because I didn't mark them. But going down the pipe, there was 3. And it hit me. The cable that I needed was tucked up nice and neat under the cabinet where I was going to put the computer. So I started laughing and come down and moved it over, plugged it in, and everything worked flawlessly. But it took me back to that guy's story about being real, and I think that's how where we are making an impact. Everybody goes through the same struggles. Some try to hide them, and some don't. And sometimes it is right in your face in this church, but that's okay because I love it. Because that's how we get over stuff, and that's how we move forward chasing Jesus, is because we try not to hide everything. We all still hide a little bit, but guys, today's the day to change. Whatever it is you're struggling with, today's the day, because there's no better day than the day to get things on the right path. So let's go to time of worship. If you'll stand with me, we're going to crank the music up, I hope. I had a bunch of it unplugged again, but I think I tried it. It'll work. If it doesn't, Pastor Dustin is ready to preach. I know he is. And it's going to be a great day. All right, pray with me. Lord, we just thank you. We thank you for another day. We get to come into this house and worship you.
Well, good morning and welcome to Renovation Church. And first service is where it's at. You know why? Because it's 68 degrees in here. Second service is going to be 98 degrees in here. So you are wise to come early. I was thinking, Shayna and Tara, we need to write a letter to that company that makes that splitter and just commend them on their great workmanship, since Hayden pounded that thing hard. It wasn't like a few soft hits. I'm like, that thing's done. I was waiting for it to explode. But it still worked after he got the right cable in it. It was good stuff. I love how God works. You love how God works? I love how he works. He's working in all of our lives, whether we want to realize it or not. And as I get prayed over here at the second song every Sunday, and I wouldn't want it any different. I want that every single time. Steve said something right before that. He said we should be the happiest people on earth. Believers in Jesus should be the happiest people on earth. And as he said that, and I'm so glad that he did, because I believe God wanted me to hear that this morning, because we're going to get into some matters that make us stress out. That we're going to talk about anxiety. We're going to talk about depression. We're going to talk about some really hard things that, whether it's affecting us personally, it's affecting those around us that we love. And I want us to realize how much we really do. We really do matter. I matter. You matter. We all matter. God made us for a purpose. And it's not just to sit around stressed out, but we do that a lot. We sit around and we stress out, or maybe we don't even just sit around. We stress out everywhere we go. And I want to kind of talk about that a little bit today. Because do you ever just sit around and think about anxiety? Anxiety is kind of a big deal in life, right? I mean, we talk about it more freely now than ever, which is not a bad thing. And as believers, we need to be willing to talk to other believers about stuff instead of keeping it all bottled up and hidden inside. Because maybe you don't struggle with it directly, but somebody you know does. Somebody you know struggles with anxiety, with depression, with not feeling, not feeling good, not being happy enough. Somebody you know struggles with that. And whether you realize it or not, that affects you. And so we've got to come to terms with some stuff. We've got to come to terms with the fact that it's out there. We've got to come to terms with the fact that the enemy is real, and he likes to whisper, and he likes to yell, and he likes to be really loud in our face, and really to do everything he can to make us think that we don't matter at all, to make us think sometimes that just this place would just be better without us, to make us think that our families maybe would be better off if we weren't there, to make us think maybe that our workplace would be better if we weren't there anymore, or our children would be better if we weren't there anymore, or mom and dad wouldn't have to struggle so much if I wasn't here anymore. Believe it or not, all of you have had these thoughts. All of us have. Every single one. We can say, oh, no, I don't think like that. Well, listen, we've all had those moments that the enemy's tried to creep in and make us feel like we didn't matter. When the reality is God didn't create you just to sit around to feel like you don't matter. He created you for a purpose. He created you to matter, to make a difference, to have a purpose. And anxiety is kind of the real pandemic right now that I'm worried about. And it's kind of rampant. And I get to see adults, and I get to do youth on Wednesday, and I get to see a lot of angles of it. And it is not just amongst one group of people; it's everyone. And it takes a hold of people, and the enemy knows. Satan knows how to get us to feel our worst. And I hate that about him. I hate that about him, that he knows how to make every one of us in this room feel like we are worthless, when that's just not the truth. So anxiety, I just want to kind of get this out there because some people just don't know what it is. It's feeling worry or nervousness or unease, typically about an imminent event. Something's about to happen. A about to happen event that's about to take place with a very uncertain outcome. And sometimes we even know the outcome and we still get a little worried about it. Sometimes we still get bent out of shape and nervous. And so there's a progression to this anxiety. And you may be thinking today, well, this doesn't impact me. I want you to listen, because maybe you'll hear about exactly what people in your life are going through. And maybe you'll understand a little more about how to help them, about how to pray for them, about how to love them and show them value and show them that they matter, because everyone does. And sometimes we fall short of showing people how much they matter in our lives because of what they've done or their reputation. Or maybe we just don't click well with them, so we don't tell them that they're important to us. When we've got to start being the happiest people on earth. And by being happy, it should overflow into those around us. So there's this progression that anxiety leads to depression. Depression leads to self-hate. Self-hate leads sometimes to self-harm, right? And we see this go into different angles and different ways, and it just spirals out of control from there, and it can get worse and worse. And depending on who you are and how you handle it, matters. Certain habits can be a sign of anxiety, right? Overeating, poor diet, inactivity, smoking, drinking, drug addiction, all these things, toxic relationships, sadness, cutting, which is craziness, right? We look at that and we're like, why would people ever cut themselves? Because they're struggling. And I don't know if you know this or not, but that's like one of the most rampant things amongst teenagers. You know a teenager that's cutting themselves, I promise you. You know a teenager out there that is cutting themselves. It's so relevant, and that's their way of getting rid of this pain by causing a different pain. And we look at that like, man, that's really crazy, but listen, it's just another way for them to try to feel important and try to feel something, because the enemy has them at this place of worthlessness. Oh, and those things can go on and on. There's so many ways. And I'm not here to like bum you out today. I'm here to just lay it all out there for you so we know what we need to deal with. Because we got to talk about the real things that happen. I'm not a big fan of sweeping the hard things under the rug and just celebrating the good things. I want to celebrate the good things, but I want to get rid of the hard things by bring them out front and dealing with them. So we know how to love people, and we know how to care for people. And we know how to make people our priority. Stuff is not our priority. People need to be our priority. Amen. We're going to be in some scripture today. We're going back to Kings. 1 Kings 19. I've been in the Old Testament a little bit here lately. There's some good stuff in there. So 1 Kings 19, 1 through 18. I don't know if we'll get all the way to 18. 1 through 13, I know for sure. And I want to kind of lay out some groundwork for you, because here's what we're going to see in this scripture. We're going to see some hopelessness. We're going to see some worthlessness. We're going to see some despair, some thoughts of this guy, this Elijah, J-A-H, not Jah. Don't be confused. A few verses over and, a little bit down, we'll see Elijah, but not yet. But, there's thoughts of ending his life, and there's isolation from others. That's depression. That's anxiety. That's what we just talked about. And, if we really think about it, these men and women that had to live this life before us, and God decided they were so valuable they needed to be in this book, they dealt with the same things we deal with. It was a different time, and maybe their struggles were a little different, but not a whole lot different. They were still people dealing with people, and people can sometimes be not so fun to deal with. And sometimes people are some of the best puppets for Satan to use against us. And we have to understand that. And I want you to know today, I want you to have this phrase in your head. I want you to be able to say this: I matter. I matter. Go ahead, say it one time. I matter. Because you do. You need to be able to say, I matter. God created me for a purpose. It doesn't matter the stupid, crazy, foolish things I've done in the past, because we can all raise our hand on that. We got it. But we still matter. He's not given up on us. Even though everybody around us may have, God has not. And I want you to know today, you matter. And so you have this hopelessness, this worthlessness, despair, thoughts of ending his own life, this isolation from others, which is a sign of some things that could be happening. But also, we're going to see how God restores. He doesn't give up on his people. You know what happens is we give up on God. We give up on his power because it's not exactly the way we want it sometimes. I want to give you a little backstory. So Elijah had just gone through some really, really crazy stuff in 17 and 18 in those chapters. We're not going to go through it all. But he prayed for rain. And it came. At first he prayed for it to stop raining. Then he prayed for it to rain. And God gave him these amazing abilities that were of God, but his faithfulness to God is why he had it. And I want to go to James real quick. You don't have to flip over there. It'll be on the screen. But I want you to hear this, because this brings this stuff in 1 Kings to life for me. And it says, Elijah was a man with a nature like ours. And he prayed earnestly that it would not rain, and it did not rain on the earth for 3 years and 6 months. So, first of all, I want you to understand, I love this because it tells me God's saying, listen, he's just like you. He's just like you. You know what he did, though? He was faithful. He was obedient to God. So when he prayed for it to not rain, when he prayed earnestly for that it would not rain, it didn't rain for 3 years and 6 months. Now, if it would have been like a week, we would have been like, okay, well, maybe he got lucky. Okay, a month, he's maybe still getting a little lucky. We're in a bit of a drought. After a year, you're starting to look at him and think, that guy's got a relationship with God because he's got something going on. After 2 years, you're looking at him thinking, I want to be in step with God like this guy is. After 3 years, you're thinking, okay, brother, you have the relationship. Can you get the rain back? But you know what I think's really interesting about that? Is that even when they started to realize how powerful his relationship with God was, that no one else started to want that same relationship to be able to pray for the rain to start again. I never thought about that until I was reading it. I'm thinking, you think that would be, watching him pray for that and seeing 3 years and 6 months, did that not strengthen up somebody's relationship with God, saying, look at what he's got and his ability because of his obedience to the Lord? So then he prayed again, and the sky poured rain, and the earth produced its fruit. So this is what Elijah has been able to do. He's been able to pray for a drought and able to pray for it to end. And then not only did it end, the land was fruitful. And so he's gotten to be close with the Lord. How powerful is that? And he's gotten to use some of that ability that the Lord has given him, not his ability, the Lord's ability through him, to use and show people the power of God. And then not only that, he brought life and health to this widow's son, who was, and I love the Old Testament, because you look at some of them guys and you're like, what in the world is he doing? He stretched out on him 3 times. Like he's dead. Would you leave him alone? Then he gets up and he's like, whoa, look, he's alive. God did that. God utilized Elijah and all his obedience. And I'm sure that he could have walked in there and said, if God said, get up, he would have done it. But God said, you know what, go in there and stretch out on him 3 times. Because I want them to see that you're going to be obedient to me, and then we're going to take care of this. There's obedience and all that. But he got to be a part of that. And then he got to defeat 450 Baal false prophets. And that's just an amazing story. You need to go back in 17 and 18 and read all this stuff that he got to be a part of. He challenged these 450 Baal prophets that were mouthing and so cocky and arrogant in all their walk and all their ways to their fake God. And there was a competition whose altar could catch fire. And Elijah's so obedient to the Lord. He's like, I know my God. I trust my God. Start pouring water all over this thing. Not just once, twice, but 3 times. Start soaking this thing. And they're thinking, oh, look, he's so foolish. That thing ain't never going to catch on fire. But it did. Because of his obedience and his faith, and not because of what he was able to do, but what God did through him, through his obedience. You see, he had a really great walk. At that point in time, probably one of the happiest guys on earth. But then the world happened. And he started to listen to other things other than just God. He started to listen to people. And he started to get anxiety. And he started to get fear. And he got a little scared. So jump over with me to 1 Kings 19. And then we're going to look at the first 3 verses here. And then we're going to jump down a little further. And it says, now Ahab told Jezebel that what Elijah had done. And now he had killed all the prophets with the sword. He eliminated them after they proved to be false prophets. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, so may the gods do to me and even more, if I do not make your life as the life of the one of them by tomorrow, about this time. And he was afraid, and he arose and he ran for his life, and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. So I want you to see what has just happened. I want you to, before we go any further, we've got to understand what's happened. He has walked with God. His relationship was strong. Have you been in a relationship with Jesus and you're like, man, it is so good right now. I am feeling blessings. I'm feeling awesome. He's just laying it out there for me. And things are going really great. And it's a really good season. And it's just really good right now. Me and Jesus are so close right now. And then something starts to creep in. And when you're a believer in Christ and you have a brother or a sister in Christ and you're walking together with them, you start to see the signs in their life. That the world's starting to creep in and their closeness with the Lord isn't what it used to be. And you may try to tell them and share with them about your concerns. They don't always listen. But listen, he should have been able to look at this and say, listen, I'm not afraid. I'm not scared of this queen. Ahab is known as a bad king, and his wife, this very, very ruthless woman, she's part of a generational ruthless family. And she is absolutely wanting to destroy him. But this guy had just eliminated 450 false prophets. What was he going to be scared of? He had God on his side. He's seen his power. But she sends word, hey, I'm going to deal with you for doing this stuff to my people in my kingdom. And he gets scared. He's scared of people. He's scared of this queen and her husband and their reputation. You know, oftentimes we don't even realize the situation. We're scared of a reputation. Maybe we're scared of ruining ours. Maybe we're scared of somebody else's. Maybe we're intimidated. But right here we see proof that even when it's going really good, something can happen and all of a sudden it turns in a heartbeat and changes your mind. Have you ever been in that situation where the walk is good with the Lord? And someone says something or something happens, you get discouraged, and all of a sudden you're like, oh. I made a Facebook post about something I'm very passionate about. This whole Genesis rainbow thing. I'm very passionate about that being about a promise from God. Very passionate about that. That's a promise from God. Nothing more, nothing less. A promise from God. I made a Facebook post about that. I was getting bashed from people I went to high school with over 20 years ago. I'm like, I don't even know you. We're not friends on Facebook. How did you even find me? You were searching this out. And I, for a hot minute, I was really upset because I'm like, man, I didn't want them to get all sideways because of my stance on this. I wasn't being rude or disrespectful. I love everybody. But this stands for God's promise. And I wasn't going to waver on that. And for a minute, I let the comments of two men that I haven't seen in over 20 years start to twist on my mind. And that's how we are sometimes. Sometimes we get a little sideways because of just someone's words. And we let that impact us to the point where we start to feel like, man, I'm really feeling strong in this with God. And then we start thinking, man, should I have not done that because I didn't want to hurt somebody's feelings? I don't want to make them mad. But then I had to just realize maybe there's some conviction in there. Maybe they're upset because they're a little convicted about something I don't even know what it is. They found it somehow. And I'm not going to let that ruin me. But we get caught up in things like that because other people's opinions sometimes matter to us more than God's. Probably more often than we'd like to admit. And here's what happens is when we start to let other people's opinions matter more than God's, we're going to start to hear the enemy, and we're going to start to hear people, and we're going to start to hear problems, and we're going to start to have worry, and we're going to start to have anxiety, we're going to start to have depression, and we're going to see this snowball out of control, and somebody's got to step up and say, listen, brother, I see some stuff changing. Let me pray with you. Let's talk about this. What's going on? This is what it looks like to have a community of people that love each other. That's what the church is supposed to be. If you go to church and never talk to people and never get to know people, then you're really not going to church. You're checking a box. If I just offended you, sorry, but that's how it is. You need to get to know somebody. You don't need to know everybody. You need to get to know somebody. And you start walking life with them. And you start encouraging them. And hopefully you get encouraged by them. And that way, whenever you're walking with them in life, you guys can be like, hey, I noticed something's not the same. We need to have ourselves surrounded by believers. Every time I talk to somebody that's going through a tough time, I always like to tell them, listen, you've got to get the ones out of your life that are dragging you down. The ones that are taking you from a good place with Jesus to a tough place in this world, you got to get rid of those people. Sometimes subtraction is the most awesome addition. Sometimes you have to take them out of your life. Not that you don't love them, not that you don't care for them, but for your own well-being. You can still pray for them, put them on your prayer list and pray for them every single day. But sometimes you got to take those people out of your life because they're not helping you. And maybe there will come a time when you can be there in their life and be encouragement to them, but if they're dragging you the wrong way, then it's not right. And so we have in these first three verses, we have this anxiousness, this fear, this he's scared. He's scared for his life. He just got to do some really amazing things with God. Yet now, just a short time later, a very short time later, he is scared to death. He's feared. He's crippled with fear. He's gone to this place. He's left his servant. And then he goes on to say, but he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. And he came and sat down under a juniper tree. Your Bible might say a broom tree. It's just a tree that looks literally like a broom. If you flipped it upside down, you can sweep the floor with it. And he requested for himself that he might die. And he said, "It is enough now, O Lord, take my life, for I am not better than my fathers." He lay down and slept under the juniper tree, and behold, there was an angel touching him. And he said to him, "Arise and eat." And then he looked, and behold, there was at his head a bread cake baked on hot stones, and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. He's still depressed. Then again the angel of the Lord came again a second time and touched him and said, "Arise and eat, because this journey is too great for you." And so he arose and he ate and drank and went in strength for that 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mountain of God. So let's talk about this before we go on any further. Let's understand what's happening right here, because he's left his servants and then he walks a whole nother day. You know why? Because he's scared for anybody to know where he's at. He's scared to death. But here's what I want you to think about. He's scared to death, but he just went into the wilderness and asked to die. He doesn't want to die. He doesn't want to die. He wants to be saved, but he's so scared, he's crippled, and he's not thinking right. All he's doing is crying out to God, please just take my life. I can't do any more. I've got nothing left. I'm not as good as my fathers. I'm not as good as anybody. I'm struggling. And listen, it's not about being as good as your fathers, your brothers, your sons, your cousins, your sisters, your mothers, your aunts, your uncles. It's about being you who God created you to be with God. Because that's all he ever expected you to be. He doesn't expect you to be some superstar in the world. He just wants you to be obedient and faithful. He just wants you to be willing to say, you know what, I'm going to go do it because God's laid it in front of me and I can see that that's what I'm supposed to do. I can see this is the path that I'm supposed to walk down. But he doesn't want anyone to know where he's at. And then he goes on, I love the honesty. It is enough. It is absolutely enough. It's enough of what I've done. I've done all I can do. Have you ever been at that walk in your life? Like, I got nothing left. I've got nothing left. You know, sometimes in life, you just look in the mirror and you're like, I don't know what this person has left to offer. I don't know what else I can do. I'll be honest with you. I've had times, even since we planted Renovation Church, that I looked at Shannon and said, I don't think I have anything left. I don't think I have anything left. I've got nothing left to give. I don't know what the plan is, but I've got nothing left to give. I've got nothing left that I can do to help people because I'm just drained. And I've let the world take over and I'm exhausted. I know that I was like that in outside of being a pastor too. I remember walking and talking with people. I had a really great guy, a mentor in my life. His name was Ed. Awesome guy. He was nearing retirement and was living really his best life. He was teaching Sunday school, him and his wife. And I had just been promoted to his supervisor. We were working overnights at that big blue box store that everybody loves to check themselves out at. Shaking my head. But we were working overnights, and I remember he was doing great. And I just remember how awesome our conversations were. We talked about God all the time. We talked about Jesus all the time. It helped strengthen my walk. And I remember one day I get a call from my boss, says, hey, I need you to come in tonight a little early. Ed had a seizure, so he won't be here. Ed had never had a seizure in his life. Never in his life had he had a seizure. He had a seizure, and ever since that day, it was never the same. They tried to find a medication for him, and it didn't work. They tried to help him out, and they couldn't. The doctors couldn't figure it out, and he was getting depressed and anxiety. Ed ended up taking his own life. And I remember thinking to myself, I've got nothing left to give. This man knew Jesus. Why did it have to happen? Why did it have to go down this road? I don't understand. I remember at that point in time, I don't even know how I functioned because I was like, this guy was such a mentor to me. And I remember looking and just thinking, I got nothing left to give. I've got nothing left to give. This guy gave it all. He had worked hard his entire life. He sold insurance on the side. He worked at Walmart for 20-something years. He was doing well for himself. He was getting ready to sell their house. They had bought a cabin on the lake. They had just bought a brand new boat, a brand new truck to go pull that boat. Suicide wasn't on his mind. He had planned on going and living the golden years with his wife and being happy. And when it happened, I thought, I have nothing left to give after watching that happen. It took some time. But you know what helped me through that? It helped me to have brothers that I could call on when I didn't understand. When I didn't have the answers. I just had people that would say, you know what? It's not about your plan or my plan. God's got some other plan. And it's not about you knowing exactly what was going through his mind when that happened. But you knew his heart when he was with you. And that's what you have to lean on. And I remember thinking, I've got to just start giving this over to God because I was fretful. I had anxiety. I was depressed over my friend, my mentor, this guy that meant so much to me. And I remember I seen his wife like 3 days after it had happened, and she came in, and I couldn't even hardly look her in the eye because she was confused too. And I know now what's awesome is I know that she's still strong with the Lord, but she had to get through a season. She had to get through a season of not knowing and worrying and doubt and unclarity. And all she had to depend on was fellow Christians and God. But that's all she needed. And what could have happened, what's some of the stuff that could have happened? We could have just got isolated. We could have got depressed ourselves to a point of who knows what. She could have gone down this whole other avenue. Her entire golden years were shifted. She's remarried now, praise God. And she's got a wonderful life now. Now I'm sure she still goes through moments where she wonders and has confusion still, I'm sure. But God has blessed her in her faithfulness and her obedience. And I think that no matter what we go through in life, no matter how hard the struggles may be, no matter how tough the marriage gets sometimes, you just got to stop talking for a minute, look in each other's eyes and say, you matter and I matter because God created us. And that's what matters. Not the house payment or the car payment, or do we have the exact wardrobe we need to have? No, it's you and it's me. It's not stuff. And you matter and I matter, and we need to encourage each other and remind each other that we matter, because here's a great example of this man who had walked a strong walk with the Lord. But then he was scared and had anxiety and fear and depression, and he was scared. And he just spiraled out of control to the point where he found himself in the wilderness alone. And all he could think was, God, I've had enough. Take my life. Take my life. But God says, I don't want you to die. When your day comes, you'll pass away, you'll die. But until then, I want you to eat. I want you to eat. I want you to drink. I want you to eat. I want you to drink. I want you to get rest, because this journey ahead of you, you are not able to do. Well, how's that supposed to be encouraging? Because you're not supposed to do it alone. Because this journey ahead of you, you're going to need all the food and drink you can handle, all the rest you can handle, but you're going to need God. Because you're not prepared for this next 40. You're not prepared for the next 40 days. You're not prepared for the next 40 years. You're not prepared, and I'm not prepared. But with God, we'll be just fine if we're obedient and faithful. I love how he sends an angel to minister to him. This shows the power of my God. Do you realize that he will send angels to minister to you? Not only just angels, but he'll send people to minister to you. If someone says, how are you doing? Don't just shrug it off. God might have brought them to you so you can say, listen, it's not good. I'm having a rough day. Work sucks. I can't get it figured out. My marriage is not doing great. We can't get it figured out. You got to be honest. We got to get rid of it's good. There's no way every person I've ever met is doing good. No way. I've met too many people for you all to be doing good. Somebody in this room right now, multiple people in this room right now are struggling. Promise you. Some of them, I know their struggles very, very, very intimately. We've got to pray for each other. Why? Because they matter and you matter. Why do we know that? Because we're no different than this person. It's told us in James, he is just like us. And if God says he's just like us and he's going to send angels to minister to him, don't you think he cares about you and me? He absolutely does. Remember that. He absolutely loves us. And then he came to a cave and lodged there. We're in verse 9. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him. And he said, what are you doing here, Elijah? He said, I've been very zealous for the Lord and the God of hosts, for the sons of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they seek my life to take it away. Your version might say he was jealous. And it said, so he said, go forth and stand in the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord was passing by. How cool. And a great strong wind was rending the mountain, coming on by, round in the bend, and breaking in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of a gentle blowing. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave. And behold, the voice came to him and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? And they go on to repeat this same thing, but I want you to know what's happening here. I want you to understand very clearly what's happening with God and with Elijah in this relationship. He's drawing him back in. He's drawing him back in, but telling him, don't look at everything as if it's God. Not everything is God. You got to call upon me. The storms, the fires, all these things, that's not me. If you look back in some other Old Testament stuff, God showed up in that stuff, right? He's telling Elijah, listen, you speak directly to me. You talk to me. Don't be looking for me in every little nook and cranny where you know I may not be. You know where to find me? Call out to me. Call out to me. I'm not in the bar. I'm not in the bottom of what's on tap. I'm not rolled up in that joint. I'm not in that extramarital affair. I'm not in the midst of you taking things that don't belong to you. I'm not in the midst of your greed. I'm not in the midst of your deceitfulness. But the moment you want to step away from those things and call out to me, I'll show up. I'm only going to be in the storms when you call on me. Stop trying to ride them out by yourself. How many times do we ride out these storms thinking, God's got me, and he's thinking, why did you get in the middle of that? I didn't tell you to go out in the middle of the storm with a big pole in your arm and wonder why the electricity hit me. Sometimes we need to sit and call upon him and listen. How do we do that in our life? How do we do it? We open up this word and we start reading it. I got a new Bible. It's much lighter. And no pages are falling out yet. But I love what God's giving us here. God's telling us that no matter how scared or anxious or fearful we get, that we matter to him. And the moment we call out to him, he'll help minister to us with angels, with people, himself. He will minister to us in our hurting and most broken times. Listen, we've got to call out to him. We've got to start getting that relationship. You know, I shared with you earlier that about cutting and all these things that we're seeing teenagers do. It's not just teenagers. There's adults possibly in this room that are doing the same thing. They're hurting themselves, causing self-harm. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's a million other different options. Causing self-harm because they just want to feel something because they haven't felt anything in so long. Because they feel worthless and they feel depressed and they feel anxious. and they feel lonely, and now they've isolated themselves. And whenever they talk, they do happen to talk, they gotta boast about things that aren't real or try to be something they're not because they feel like they've got to try to get something. If that sounds like you, then maybe this altar today is your place. Or maybe you know someone that feels worthless today, that feels like they have no value, that feels like they don't matter anymore. Then maybe you need to come up here and you need to pray for them because somebody needs to be calling out to God for them. Because maybe they're at the point right now they don't even realize that's what they need. Because they're just so lost. They're so hurt and they're so broken. And they're so dark right now they just don't even know how to call out to God. They don't even realize that right now if they just said Jesus, that he shows up. If they just say Jesus, that he's present. So I'm gonna challenge you today. It's so on my heart. Because here's the deal. I know every single one of us, if we really, really look deep inside of ourselves, if we really survey the territory that we call our life, if we really honestly look at it, we got some situations where we feel like maybe we just don't matter anymore. That maybe we're just not good enough. That maybe just living another day would be holding somebody else back. When God says that's not the plan at all. God says, I love you. I created you. Just like Elijah is a man just like you guys are. He's a human being just like you. And when he was hurting and broken and anxious and depressed and wanted his life to be done, God ministered to him. And today, right here, in your brokenness, in your I don't matterness, in your torn up life, in your struggling marriage, in your struggling parenting, and all these struggles, he just wants you to know, if you call out his name, he'll remind you that you do matter. You matter so much because he loves you. He loves you with everything he is. He didn't make you by accident. He made you on purpose to do work for him. And if the God that created everything, from the stars to the smallest blade of grass to the sand, if he cares enough to make you, don't you think you have a purpose? Don't you think you matter? We're going to play a song. And I'm just going to challenge you. Today is a great day. It's going to be beautiful outside. The sun is great, and you could go home and be depressed and have anxiety, or you can come lay it down at the altar. You can come nail whatever it is to the cross. Physically nail it to the cross. And then when you get done, you can get up and trust and obedience and say, God will make this your best day. And that when we leave this place, like Steve just told me earlier, you can be the happiest people like you're supposed to be. I love that, Steve. We should be the happiest people because God says we matter. The altar.
Let's give the Lord a hand this morning. Amen. Oh, it's great to see everyone here at Renovation Church this morning. We're just blessed to have you, and I hope this service has been a blessing to you. Tithe boxes are out in the hall next to the door. There's one back in the back of the sanctuary. Folks, if you haven't been here through the week, we would love to have you in some of our classes that we have. Monday nights is all women's class. Wednesday nights we have kids, we have women, we have men, we have mixed classes. Thursday nights recovery classes. Saturdays we're working on the new building, which is coming along, and it's going to be here before you know it. As a church, we are doing The Chosen this year. Last year we read the Bible together. This year's The Chosen. We're showing that on Wednesday nights. I think we just did episode 4 of season 2 from The Chosen. And so if you haven't started watching that, oh wow, this thing is wonderful. The episode Wednesday night that we watched Jesus healed the paralyzed guy at the pool at Bethesda. If you guys don't understand how strong your God is, you need to start thinking about the power of Jesus walking up to a person who's been paralyzed 38 years and saying, do you want to be healed? Then get up, take your bed, and walk. Okay, that is just 2 sentences, and Jesus healed this guy who had been paralyzed 38 years. okay, and had laid by a pool, hoping to be healed by a pool for all that time. Okay, that is the Jesus that loves you that much. 2 sentences and he heals a paralyzed person. Imagine what he can do in your life whenever you pray. Amen? We serve a wonderful God. Let's give the Lord one more hand and then let's go to him in prayer. Pray with me, would you? Father in heaven.